What's up everyone, it's your FPL Thinking Cap Benji and welcome back to Meta Moves. In this one, we're going to be discussing Matthias Cunha, we're going to be discussing all of the potential replacements, we're also going to be touching on Ait-Nouri alternatives, and at the end of the video, we'll complete a reassessment of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Thinking Cap activated. So guys, let's start with the sleeper selection for Gameweek 17, and the picks have been pretty insane this season. In 9 match weeks, we've had 7 recommendations produce returns, with a handful of them also becoming strong template picks like Cunha and João Pedro. For 17, we've got another forward who deserves some consideration, and that's Raul Jimenez. Only 4.9% owned, only 5.5 million as well, and he's confirmed penalties for Fulham after Andreas Pereira missed from the spot back in Game Week 8. If you watch me regularly, you'll know how highly I value owning penalty takers because it's the strongest form of routes to points. Owning Jimenez means you'll have a differential penalty taker, making him a very, very appealing option. I don't think Raul is fully meta just yet because of the minutes. Across the last 5 weeks, he's averaged just 60 minutes per match, which is a problem. You won't see Jimenez on the pitch for longer than 75, if you're lucky maybe 80 minutes, and if we look at the next few fixtures, there is a small chance he misses one of the next 2 games, including Southampton at home this week. Chelsea away in Game Week 18 is during the middle of the week. The last time Jimenez was benched was in Game Week 14, the first midweek round. For that reason, I do think there's potential for Marco Silva to give Muniz the Southampton game and save Raul for Chelsea. I don't think Raul will be benched in 18 because Chelsea is a big game for them, and I do think Raul is clearly first choice for Marco Silva. If we look at his underlying stats, they're pretty decent for a striker on pens at 5.5 million. I'm a little disappointed by the post-shot XG sitting at 0.4. Post-shot XG is a finishing skill measurement, so the fact that he is lower down is a tiny concern, but in terms of shot volume, he's sitting inside the top 5 forwards. His involvement percentage for all of Fulham's goals this season is really high at 54%, which is actually the 4th best involvement rate at the moment. And what we can take out of this is that if Fulham score inside 60 minutes, Raul Jimenez has got a very, very good chance to be involved. Fulham's fixtures are actually pretty nice coming up, at least the next block of 10 to 12 games. Obviously, the next 5 includes the likes of Southampton, Bournemouth, Ipswich, and West Ham, but Fulham also face Leicester Palace and Wolves in this next patch, so he's got some decent hold potential. I wouldn't say Jimenez is particularly a long-term pick, but I do see him as Fulham's first choice number 9, and even if he misses 1 game in the next 5, I still think he's a great pick in terms of value, and he's definitely got a real chance of coming into the power curve. Fulham aren't the most attacking team this season, they're just not. They sit 14th in the league for XG this season accumulated, but because of Jimenez's involvement rate, because he will get most of those big chances, and because the medium-term fixtures are pretty nice, I do think he's the best cheap forward to purchase right now. Moving into my power curve tier list for FPL's forwards, and I wanted to bring this back because I've gotten a few questions across the weekend regarding Matthias Cunha and when you should sell, who's the best replacement, and honestly it just depends on who you've already got. My first piece of advice would be to head to someone you know you're going to want long term, so that would be at least for the next 7 to 10 weeks, and for me, Alexander Isak tops this list. He is pretty expensive now at 8.7 million, but his GA total is rising. He's now hit 11 returns for the season, and he's averaging the strongest non-pen XGI per 90 with 0.73. Nico Jackson's non-pen XGI is only 0.03 less, but Isak has stronger projected minutes long-term, and he's also on Newcastle penalties. So for me, Isak is the better pick at the moment, but from a fixtures perspective, Jackson is a close second. At the cheaper price points, we've got Raul, who we just discussed, and the other option in and around that price is João Pedro. And for me, I do think João Pedro's minutes are a little bit better than Raul's, but Raul is just above João Pedro because of the fixtures. Fulham's fixture congestion, it is a little bit tighter compared to Brighton, so I do think João Pedro is prone to less rotation over the next couple weeks. And in terms of underlying stats, JP does edge Raul just slightly, but I still think the fixtures are good for Raul, and that's why I would prefer him at the moment. Let's touch on Mateta. Crystal Palace's attack are a bottom half team in terms of XG accumulated this season. Mateta has the worst post-shot XG total at 0.21. His finishing quality has been much, much lower than all of the other 6 on this list this season. So for me, he's not really an option considering that Also, Eze and Ismail Assar are way cheaper, and I don't think Mateta is worth the price over some of those other attackers. Chris Wood has 10 goals already this season with decent fixtures coming. I do think he's going to break his personal goal scoring record in the Prem of 14 in one season. You would need to work out a rotation pairing with a Wood, maybe a Morgan Rogers. He's someone that works really well with Forest's fixtures, but I do prefer both Jimenez and João Pedro from a value perspective. If you did get Wood at a pretty cheap price, then I would just stick with him, because at 6 million, Wood can compete with the João Pedros and the Morgan Rogers, João Pedros and Raúls. But in terms of if you're looking at it to buy Wood now at 6.6 million when his price is a little bit inflated, I don't think he's worth it. And I think you're just benefiting the guys who are already sitting on Wood, and they've been sitting on him since Gameweek 5 this season. So I wouldn't be heading to Wood. I would prefer JP and Raul in that situation. Dom Solanke has pretty good underlying data. His post-shot XG at 0.52 is the third best on the tier list, and his non-pen XGI is also third highest. I know a lot of good managers like Let's Talk FPL, a couple of my own friends, who they do own Solanke right now, and his dataset tells us that he's still one of the best finishers in the league right now to buy. And he's also got a pretty decent size of Tottenham's XGI pool, which is one of the best attacks in the league for sure. But Spurs attackers, they have the Thursday-Sunday fixture congestion, which is not something I'm interested in dealing with during the busiest part of the season. Overall, though, I would say Isak is the best replacement if you're looking to move up from Matthias Cunha. Raul and João Pedro are the best to move down to, and I would also consider Jackson if you already own a João Pedro or an Isak. Ryan Ait-Nouri was sent off after the final conclusion of the Ipswich game last weekend, and he is suspended for Game Week 17. When he does return in Game Week 18, he'll still be on 4 yellow cards, so I really think if you do own him, then it's probably time to sell, especially if you bought him super cheap at 4 million. I'd be looking to cash out ASAP. Now, my favorite replacement is Anthony Robinson from Fulham. He captained Marco Silva's side to earn a 2-2 draw, with Robinson involved in both of Fulham's goals. Captain performance. He is a little bit more pricey than the other options on the list, but Fulham have the second best fixtures out of all 20 teams across the next 10, and Robinson has produced 8 defender returns, which is the most on the shortlist, joint most, I think, with Milenkovic, and that includes 6 assists and 2 clean sheets. Look, he's been excellent this season. He's the clear standout replacement with good fixtures, great attacking upside, and 100% nailed long term. I also like Munoz at that kind of similar price range, 4.7 million. From an XGI perspective, he's the most attacking defender on the tier list. Crystal Palace's defense has been pretty decent this season, but my only concern with Munoz is that he's actually pretty expensive at 4.7. All 3 of Crystal Palace's centre backs and their goalkeeper Dean Henderson are sitting at the 4.4 to 4.5 million price range, and for me, I do think saving 0.2 million could be worth it here, because all 3 centre backs have more than 2 GA this season. Yes, you guys heard me right. Lacroix, Chalobah, and Guehi have produced 2 or more attacking returns this season, because Palace are pretty decent from set pieces. So I think that whole Palace defense is good for FPL points, but Munoz definitely has the best underlying data, and considering the upcoming fixtures starting in 19, I do think he's got a chance to become a fully meta pickup. If you're low on budget and if you need a cheaper alternative, then I do like Joachim Andersen at 4.2. Now, he is still injured at the moment, but Marco Silva said in his most recent press conference that he's getting very close, and he could be back for Southampton, and at 4.2 million, access into that Fulham defense, amazing bargain. But obviously we do need to see if he is fit to start this weekend. More news on that coming later. Make sure you're subscribed. Even if he doesn't start though, I still think he'll be back relatively soon, and as we've just spoken about with Jimenez, the fixtures are pretty good long term with Fulham, so he's still an option for me. The reason why I'm really hot on Anderson is that he's so cheap at 4.2 million. If you're sitting on one of those Greaves or Harwood Bellis or a Burgess, that Anderson pick is now the best 5th defender in the game because he's so cheap. You don't want to go too expensive on your 5th defender, but you also don't want to go too cheap, as they don't really provide you any depth at this part of the season. Whereas if you go for an Anderson at 4.2, that becomes your 5th defender. You surround that, like me, with a Mikolenko, a Lewis Hall, with some Arsenal defenders, and bang, you have a very, very, very optimal defense, and you've gotten them all at very cheap prices. That's how you stay close to the meta. That's how you keep your team optimal. Another honorable mention at that price point, I would say, is Howson from Bournemouth. He was our sleeper selection last week, only 4.3 mil, good option, good goal threat. I'd also keep an eye out on Pedro Lima from Wolves, 3.9 million, could get some minutes under a new manager, so keep an eye on the Wolves situation. Let's move into Ezri Konsa. He's an interesting one because Villa's fixtures aren't actually terrible. They've got Brighton and Leicester at home in 19 and 20, and apart from Arsenal in that run, starting from 19, the fixtures are actually pretty good for Villa, but they've just kept 2 clean sheets in the league this season. And I just don't really think Konza can compete with Fulham and Crystal Palace's fixtures. Still a good pick from a minutes perspective, and his baseline BPS is so high that if Villa do keep it clean, you already know where that bonus is going. It's going straight to Ezri Konza. Colwill is a little bit similar to Konza. I think the upcoming fixtures are good for both teams from an attacking perspective, but defensively, I don't think Chelsea or Villa have particularly solid backlines, which that really scream clean sheets. I don't think the backlines, the defenses, and the fixtures really scream clean sheets to me. And Colwill also offers basically nothing attacking wise. All 3 of his returns this season have been clean sheets, and his non-pen XGI per 90 is a level below the other guys in this tier list. For those reasons, I would be avoiding Levi for the foreseeable. Lewis Hall, he's a little bit more expensive now. I own Hall. Obviously just delivered big 15-pointer for me this weekend, but he's not somebody I'd necessarily be moving to just now because, you know, he's a little bit more expensive now, 4.6 million. You've kind of missed the boat a little bit in terms of the fixtures. Ipswich away, I still think it's a good one, but after that it's Villa at home, then United away, then Tottenham away. But look, as a pick, he's definitely inside the FPL meta. 17 baseline bonus, 0.19 XGI per 90, 7 defender returns already, and decent medium-term fixtures. There's not too much to dislike here with Lewis Hall as a package, so he's a good pick, but I think the price is slightly inflated at the moment, and I wouldn't particularly go there because Newcastle's defense is not elite like it was in previous seasons. Talking about elite defenses, it brings us on to Milenkovic at 4.6. Forest fixtures, they're not a star. Look, they're not amazing, but there's still some good games coming, like Southampton at home in 22, Wolves away in 20, and Brighton at home in 24. So there's still some good ones left, and obviously Milenkovic is the main target from set pieces. He scored a goal in back-to-back games in the Premier League, so he's obviously the most attacking option in that Forest team, and a lot cheaper than Ola Aina. But what I will say on Forest is that Murillo went off injured against Aston Villa and it didn't look very good. That spine Nuno has built with Milenkovic, Murillo, and Sells, that spine has been key to Forest and to why they're sitting so high in the table right now. If Murillo is out long term, I'm not liking the look of investing in a backline with the 33-year-old Willy Bowley starting regularly. But Milenkovic has serious goal threat. He's the main target from all of the set pieces, and considering they've got A-star delivery in Elliot Anderson, I do think he's got a place in the power curve. Overall though, Fulham and Crystal Palace defenses, those are the ones to target, with both teams having options at the higher price point with Munoz and Robinson, as well as the lower price point with Anderson, Guehi, and Chalobah. So the final thing we'll touch on is Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I'm talking to the guys who don't own him right now. I think if you've already moved there, then I would just sit on him because you've used your transfers to get there already. Moving him out before Leicester, West Ham, and a potential double, only 8 game weeks away, isn't optimal. But if you don't own him, if you're like me, you were seeing every single man and their dog pick up Trent for their FPL teams, and if you were considering bringing him in ahead of 17, my personal advice to you would be to actually stay away from the Trent Alexander-Arnold investment right now. Liverpool just drew 2-2 at home to Fulham. It's not a disastrous result, and I do think Liverpool actually played well after the red card. Considering the red card, and with Arsenal dropping points, it's actually not the worst result, but my eye test tells me that Liverpool's defense isn't the same without Ibu Konate. Since Konate's injury, Liverpool have conceded 3 at Newcastle, 2 to Fulham, and overall, they've looked pretty poor. But in particular, Trent has not looked sharp at all. I said it in MetaMoves 15 or MetaMoves 60, I can't remember which one, but I did say that Trent was looking pretty sluggish, not fully fit, and the most important thing to me is that the fact that my Liverpool friends who are fans of the club, they're saying he's being super lazy, not running, not tracking back, not busting his gut when Szoboszlai and Gravenberch are covering quadruple the distance and putting in way more effort. Trent looks a little bit lackadaisical right now, and with the added weakness to Liverpool's clean sheet potential, I'm not sure Trent's attacking threat can make up for his price point. It's 7 million, guys, in your backline. 7 million, yeah? That's an insane amount of money, and Liverpool aren't the same Liverpool they were a month ago. I'm not interested in Trent at the moment. Yes, I was strongly considering him, but ultimately the negative reaction to his performances from Liverpool's fanbase, the sluggish performances and the price point, all these factors combined are telling me not to invest in Trent at this time. I also believe Alisson offers a more cost-effective entrance into Liverpool's defense, and Slot did give us some updates on Konate. He actually had a little bit of a positive boost to when he could be returning. He could be actually back in late December instead of early January, so if he's only a couple of weeks away, why use the transfer and the money and sacrifice so much for Trent when there's cheaper options which allow you to take on Trent's price point? Again, if you do own him, definitely hold, but you need to hope that he does make it worth it in Game Week 18 for that Leicester fixture. But even in 18, we've already touched on how Game Week 18 is another midweek round. There is a small chance he does get rotated for Kwanzaa, depending on whose slot has available for that game. A small chance, but still a chance for sure. In terms of Trent versus Van Dijk, I do think Trent is worth the 0.5 million more just because he's way more attacking than Van Dijk, and it's only 0.5 of a gap now. If it was 0.7, 0.8, it would actually be a conversation, but I certainly think Trent is still the most attacking defender in the game. If we look at his underlying numbers, he's averaging 0.17 shots on target per 90, but that's actually less than both Konate and Van Dijk this season. Trent's shot volume is still very solid, and he's averaging the most XGI per 90, but most of that is expected assists, not much XG in there. Trent doesn't have that big of goal threat this season, but it only takes 2 or 3 weeks for that to change, so I do think attacking returns will come. It's just when and whether he gets them with the clean sheets. So to wrap up, yes, I do think Trent is still the most attacking defender in the game. I understand he's also the cheapest he's been in years, but he is still the most expensive defender, and when he puts up 1 point, the managers with cheaper defenses and more expensive attacks will beat you on value the majority of times. And as one of the managers who has that cheaper defense and more expensive front line, I don't really feel the need to make big moves for him with the current contract situation, with the current performances, and with the current state of Liverpool's defense. If you've enjoyed this one, then smash that like button. Make sure you drop any of your personal dilemmas in the comment section. I'll do my best to respond to every single one, and I'll speak to you guys in the next one. Peace.